Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rising Flame podcast. My name is Sabrina Perry, and this is episode 4, The Narcissist. So this story is going to be a continuation of the last episode, which was Black Ribbon Army. I shared my story of widowhood, of my first husband, Mark, passing away from stage 4 melanoma. And so if you haven't seen that episode yet, go back and watch or listen to it just to kind of get caught up. Otherwise, a lot of this isn't going to make sense, but I can try to also catch you up. So in 2019, my husband and father of my 5 kids was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma, and it was a wild ride. There was only a 4-month time period from the date of diagnosis to the date he was laid to rest. So to say that it was a whirlwind is kind of an understatement. Like, it was very, very fast. A lot happened in a very short amount of time. And that was some huge change for my family. To say we were devastated and just completely heartbroken is an understatement. I mean, it was very scary. It was very sad. It was all of it. It was a lot of things. But after his death, I'm now at this point of, everything was a little weird, after his death. It's a very weird feeling for those of you that have been through something like this. Grief is not something that you can really explain with words. I did describe how I felt for the first time I felt grief hit me in the last episode, but as far as like those days, following, it was just kind of a weird fog, just kind of being in this foggy whirlwind of, just trying to figure things out and start like a new normal and keep routine for my kids and, deal with everything that was being thrown at me at the time, financial stuff, medical bills still, there's a ton of logistics after somebody passes away too. So it's a crazy time because, it's busy. There's a lot to do and there's a lot to deal with on top of the fact that you're going through this intense, crazy time. But there was such an outpouring, as I mentioned in episode 3 as well, from so many people. And it made it easier in some ways and harder in some ways. But to have the support around us was overall very amazing. There was fundraisers, there was donations, there was just an outpouring of love upon my family. So it was like simultaneously, this most dark, tragic time, but also it was so amazing to be able to see people come together and really just support a family and people, some of them that they didn't even know. There was a lot of people that donated to us and helped us out that didn't even actually know us. So it was pretty cool. We had when I say we had an army, we really had an army. I had a very big following on social media at the time. Of course, Mark worked out at a prison, so that was a very big community of itself. And then just all of the family and friends, from mutual family and friends that we had together, plus my side, plus his side, plus, everybody came out of the woodworks around this time. I kind of joke about it now, but it was even literally like a time where people that I had cut off and been done with prior to that came crawling back and wanted to show their support and stuff. And so I described it in the last episode as kind of feeling like I was in this glass house almost, where there was so much support and so much eyes on me and my family that it felt like we didn't have a whole lot of privacy. And so that was, something that was really hard to deal with in this whole new stage of widowhood, feeling like my every move was being watched and judged and oh, what's she going to do next, kind of a thing. But I was just trying my best at this time. That's all any widow or widower can do, is just try to pick up the pieces and move forward the best they can. And so I'm, like I said, trying to do everything I can to with the kids and help, maintain some normalcy, and also find time for myself. I mentioned in the last one, I, was real big into exercising and running and stuff like that, and my self-care. So, I kept up with that. And, I knew that was, my grounding space. So, I was very much, that was my time for praying and, just decompressing and releasing. And so, I stayed with that. And I also had, different books that were gifted to me, and people that, I had a older woman in Southern Oregon that she sort of like adopted me. She had lost her husband to cancer a few years prior. So she was one of those that was like, kind of the widow, big sister kind of a thing, where she, was very supportive and very loving and had just all the right things to say to me at that time because of somebody that's been there through that, So, I had a lot of support. I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of family. I had, a good social media, like I said, following of people that were very, supportive of our family at that time. And so as I'm like looking into, reading these books and, looking into how can I rebuild my new life, because that's a thing, I was 35 at the time, and at 35 years old, when you lose a spouse, that your life is not over, right? Like that's not even halfway there, right? Probably. So, I was really like, how do I begin like my new life? And one of the things that, I found in a book was that, that everybody's timelines are different and everybody's journey is different, and not to ever compare it or let anybody tell you that you're doing it wrong, because there's no right or wrong way to be a widow. Like literally after that happens, you can't, unless you were to do something illegal, there's not something really right or wrong you can do because it's right for you at the time. And so, I was ready to like move forward and start my new life and just like get this going. I was like, you know what, this is an opportunity for a fresh start to really embrace me and what I want and how I've seen my future. And I was trying to like tap into that at the time. Like, how do I want to move forward in my life? And, one of the things that I read was, to find new hobbies or to rediscover old ones. And so after 15 years of baking and 5 to 7 of that being hardcore with, really pouring into my bakery business, I was free of that also for the first time. So it was a really weird place to be like in, as far as like my husband was gone and my career was literally gone too. And so music kind of came back to me right around then. I was listening to a lot of music. I've always been a music junkie. And I would sing and I'd sit down at my piano and kind of started to mess around with that again. And it was just something that, it was like a rediscovery, tapping back into younger me for that. And then also I had a friend in the Southern Oregon area. She was actually a client that had been to one of my baking classes, but we became friends, and super sweet girl. And I followed her on Facebook and I watched her, and she started taking like these dance classes, like women's empowerment, sensual movement, burlesque type dance classes. And it was really cool to watch her, because she was when I very first met her, she was very shy and very quiet and very sweet. And then I watched her transformation as she went through these classes, where she just became very bold and unapologetic and very fierce and confident in herself. And it just looked like fun too, And so after Mark passed, I actually went to these classes, and this is where I kind of found even more of my tribe at the time and more support, where these girls just became like instantly really good friends. Every single week, going to these classes were just like so much fun. It was me time. It was time away from the kids. It was literally something that was brand new after Mark passed away, that I was able to just throw myself into and not have to think about any of it. And it was absolutely amazing. So I'm throwing this in here because it becomes relevant later. So if I talk about something and you're like, well, what's the point of that? It becomes relevant later on in the story, right? So I have to like lay the foundation for things that happen later by telling you this stuff now. So bear with me. There's a method to my madness, I swear. But so I started these classes again. They were amazing, had so much fun. And I was just doing that, right? That was my form of self-care and my finding something new. And also the books on widowhood, strongly encouraged to find new friends and community and just people that, you could just surround yourself with that would be helpful in your healing journey. And I felt like this tribe of women was just that, like they were just what I needed. So this is around, like I said, probably 2 to 3 weeks or so after Mark passes, like I said, trying to settle into my new normal, find some new things, explore the old stuff, the music, all while simultaneously dealing with life, right? Kids, finances, craziness, and still people everywhere is what that felt like. So people always coming over, people calling, my inboxes constantly being flooded, daily calls all the time, checking on me. Hey, how are you guys doing? What can we bring you? Can we bring you meals? Can we do this? I mean, it was like this onslaught, constant onslaught for probably a good month or so of people just wanting to help and to be part of, supporting our family. And so, like I said, it was awesome, but also a little invasive, but, I appreciated it a lot. And so among what I called our green family, which would have been my husband's coworkers, these people were amazing. If law enforcement, there's a brotherhood there, right? Just like military, anything, and very much a take care of their own type situation. Like these people were the first ones to put on fundraisers. They were the first ones to do the candlelight vigil for him. Like these were our like brothers and sisters is what I called them. And there was so many of them, just people that I had never even met, that I got to meet at Mark's service. And that was actually a really cool experience to, because he had told me about different people throughout the years, but living over in that Valley area, I didn't really know any of these people. So actually getting to meet some of them in person was really cool, to put the names and faces and, kind of get a glimpse into his world a little bit. But again, these people were very helpful, very amazing, with all of the financial work stuff as well, because there was a lot of logistics there. But there was a particular man that made it a point to check in on me. He started following my stuff along with everybody else, just like everybody else was, to follow Mark's journey, and was very supportive of our family. His daughter even played and sang at the fundraiser for our family. And so he was very much part of what I thought the Green family, was, and very supportive, very helpful, introduced himself at, Mark's service, very straightforward guy. And, he would continue to check in, just like everybody else would. So, and I know you guys are already like, oh my God, I know where this is going. Just stop. We're getting there. Okay. But it gets there. It gets crazy. But this is how it started. And in the beginning, like I said, just a few messages here and there, just checking in. Hey, how are you guys doing? I'm praying for you. Can I do anything for you? Kind of a thing. And it was really sweet. I didn't think anything of it. I just assumed that it was another person that was supportive of our family and very helpful. And, he offered, he would pass through that area that I lived in. And so he said, if you ever need any like guy chores done, he's like, I'm, totally cool with doing that. Again, some of Mark's friends had already done that sort of stuff for us and for my family. So I didn't think anything of that, right? I just was like, okay, cool. I could totally use that sometime. And so one day, he asked me if I needed anything, and I was like, you know what? Actually, I do. We had a wood stove, and I needed a bunch of kindling chopped for that wood stove to be able to, it was starting to get cold. So he was like, sure, no problem. I'll drop that by. And so he chopped up a bunch of wood for me and dropped it off. And I was like, that was cool, and then he would check in, again, very, few and far between. And then it started to pick up a little bit more. And I started to get like checks in my spirit right away, right in the beginning, that I was like, I wonder what's going on here, And I even was like, I wonder if he's trying to pursue me, But then he was doing it so subtly and so, very slow and not so bold that I don't know, it was very hard. And again, I was still foggy, I'm foggy brained. This is still like early widowhood. This is like a month or so after Mark passes away. So I'm clearly still trying to piece everything together myself. But we ended up, we chit chat here and there. He was a very nice, likable guy. He was friendly, funny. We had some things in common. He had children, obviously, and so did I. So, that was kind of a common thing. And the fact that he worked with Mark, and so he came across as very supportive in the beginning, very much all about like wanting to just be another person that helped our family out. And if we needed anything, that he was there. So within probably a couple weeks or so, I started to notice that, he actually was becoming more interested, but simultaneously so was I. And so this is where things started to get a little complicated, right? Because I was like, oh shit, here we are like 6 weeks or so, maybe after my husband passes away, and I'm already kind of feeling something for somebody. Oh no. And I knew right from the get-go, I was like, people are going to judge the shit out of me. Like, oh man, I knew that was not going to go good. And just my own, is it too soon? Is it not? Is it, a lot of questioning that I had going on at that time. And, but I didn't really, buy into those red flags too much, because they weren't red flags, they were just kind of like little things that I was like, this man was very, very nice, very sweet, very supportive, didn't give me any sort of like vibe that he was out to do something wrong or hurt or anything like that. In fact, he was very understanding, he would say things like, I totally understand what you're going through or what you've been through, and I don't want to push too much. And, it came across in such a way where I kind of was able to let that guard down a little bit. Right. And so those feelings I had, kind of in the beginning, so it quickly started to blossom into a romance, and he started to just feel like something that I'd always wanted. He treated me really well. He felt like that man of my dreams almost, damn, I've never been treated so well and so nice. And so, I just felt so good. But then I also had that other side that was like going, hold on. Are you sure? Is this really real? Is it too soon? Is it, really like trying to pump the brakes? And I had a lot of feelings, a lot of questions, a lot of checks in my spirit, and those got pushed away and just ignored by this whirlwind romance, because it ended up just taking off. And in that same time, frame of everything going crazy with Mark's passing of that 4 months, literally I was on this high speed, whirlwind of stuff happening. And so there wasn't a whole lot of time for me to really stop and sit and listen and pray and listen to intuition and, figure this out. It was just boom, here it is. And this is happening, kind of a thing. And he was right away just very wanted to wine me and dine me and make me his queen and show me off and shower me with affection and gifts, and would tell me how beautiful I was and how strong I was and all the things that really make a woman feel good. And, I was just, I bought it. I bought it because I mean, there's also that side of me that goes, well, yeah, I know, I'm joking, but no, like you want to feel loved. And when somebody makes you feel loved and they're expressing that to you, you take it, especially after going through that much trauma. There was a couple early red flags, again, like I said, and I remember I even called Mark's best friend because I was like, what would Mark think of all this and of this guy? And, I know it's soon, and so the next best thing I had was his best friend. And I called him and I was like, yo, so what's up with this dude? And his advice to me was run. His advice to me was get the away. Like, he was like, this guy is a womanizer. He's a cheater. He's a liar. He's an alcoholic. He's been in out of rehab. He's had all of these freaking problems. Like, do not. Like, pass go, right? And I was like, oh, geez. Okay. So I actually did take his advice and I pulled back from this guy because I was like, okay, that's concerning. I don't want to be involved in any of that. But this man was, again, very convincing, very loving, over the top with his affection and how he was. And so I actually talked to him about all of this, and, he assured me that all of that was in the past and that people make mistakes and that he's learned from everything and he's growing and, he's, doing the whole sobriety thing. And, he really sounded like, he had learned a lot from those situations. And, if you know me, I'm a total self-growth person. The whole point of this podcast is rise from the ashes, right? So I don't believe that any story, no matter how shitty it is, can dictate your worth or who you are or who you're meant to become. And so, and I've known that and I believe that for a long time. And so, that was kind of my mindset with this guy, was that, okay, well, we've all been through stuff. I mean, look what I just went through, but it's how we rise above. And, so I pursued the relationship with him and it was amazing. It was very hard, I think, for my kids, as far as that was concerned, a very sudden change for them, as you can imagine. So, and I tried to be as, helpful with them as I could through that, just explaining it to them and letting them be around him. He was actually very good with my kids in the beginning too. So slow introductions. I mean, I went about it smartly, I didn't just jump right in. I mean, I did, but I didn't, so I thought I was going about it as smart as I could. So again, we started dating, probably by the beginning of November, and to put that in perspective, Mark passed at the middle of September. So it wasn't a very long time frame afterwards. But it was amazing. I felt amazing. I felt, like I was truly loved. I had a good support system. I had my dance tribe girls. I had my family. And then I had this new man. And I thought, man, my life is really like turning out to be awesome already, after going through all of this trauma. This is crazy. And so we dated, and it was not taken well, of course, when we went public with it. There were people that blocked me. There were people that talked shit about me. Of course, I got stuff told to me that was very hurtful at that time. It's too soon, and what are you doing? And there was a lot of drama at that time, with that, because other people weren't accepting of the fact that I was moving on so quickly. They just watched me walk through this fiery battle with Mark and sticking by his side until the day he passed, and being this warrior wife to all of a sudden I'm with this new dude. So I'm sure, looking from the outside in, it was very confusing and very like, what the hell, for a lot of people, like just, not understanding what was all happening at the time. But like I said, this guy, Jay, we'll just call him Jay, Very sweet, very, very supportive, very awesome. I had so much fun. I had never laughed so much. Like, we had a lot in common. And it didn't take long for, things to escalate and for us to get more serious about, what our next step was. And at this time we were living 2.5 hours apart. So, time together was limited and complicated. Then he told me, I was his everything. He had finally found the one, that he was looking for, and he was ready to just settle down and have a life with me. And I was like, that sounds good. It sounds like I'm ready for a new life too. I'm ready for a new change. I'm ready for all of that. And so he proposed to me and I married him 2 months after that, which would have been 6 months after Mark passed was the date that we actually got married. So really, really short time frame there. And there was some little red flags that I noticed in the time that, like we started dating to the time that we got engaged to the time we got married. But there was so much going on at this time. So, again, post-widowhood, dealing with a lot, having a lot of shit I was going through of my own, plus just life, kids, the holidays. And then that's right around also, you think to end of 2019 to early 2020, oh man, that's when the pandemic was hitting us too. So not only had I just not even recovered from that cancer battle, but now there was this widespread collective trauma happening. So there was a lot going on at this time. And so the red flags, that I saw, he was very inconsistent in some things. And there was some times that, I didn't truly believe him. And there was times that I would question, and any kind of questioning I had within my spirit, it was like a very a feeling like I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Like I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't actually point it out what the thing was, right? And one of the things that I noticed early on was that he would go through like mood ups and downs. Like, I'm not talking like women do, we're PMSy and we're cranky, but this was like really high highs and really low lows. And like the high highs being very like, let's get married, let's take on the world, let's travel, let's do all this, let's, party it up, to that very extreme low of being suicidal. And, I was like, okay, that's interesting. But again, I didn't really think much of it other than just, okay, maybe he's had a bad week or day or, whatever. So those were the earliest red flags that I noticed, inconsistencies a little bit in some of his stories. And so we got married in March of 2020. And this was crazy because there was a lot happening at this time. I had a house now to sell. I was getting married. There was still people that were hating on me and talking shit because it was too soon. There was a lot going on with the kids and just a lot. And then, of course, the pandemic. So all of these decisions and everything, thrown together, mixed in with this whirlwind romance, made for us to make very hasty decisions. And so that quick marriage and the quick of the moving in together, I moved over to where he lived in his house. And it was very fast, very quick, very quick, very quick. And so I didn't have time really to, again, sit, process, see, explore these feelings that I had that, something wasn't quite right. I didn't even have time for that. It was just shit was happening. So the red flags I noticed early in the relationship didn't take long to pop up more so after I was already married to him and lived with him. So I hear this story or this analogy a lot, and it's like, I dated Jekyll and I married Hyde. And that's kind of what happened here, where I feel like I dated and was engaged to one guy, but then I was married to somebody completely freaking different once I was married to him and lived in his home. And there would be drinking. So his drinking had not stopped, even though he had told me he was on the road to sobriety. Lying about it, so trying to hide it. And there was hours and hours on his phone, very shady actions with the phone. For those of you that have been with somebody like that, you know what that's like. They keep it everywhere they go. They won't let you look at it. They're very anxious if they're showing you something on it. It's constantly face down. Everything's on mute. They're just weird with their phones, right? So that was happening. And he would have a lot of like times where, the drinking, he'd spiral and he'd have like, suicidal things where it's like, he's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I'm like, you can't do that, and here I'm the one like newly widowed trying to talk this guy out of killing himself because I don't want to go through that again. Right. Like I just did that. And it was distressing to me, to have that happen. I also found within 3 months after getting married to him, I found proof that he had an affair with his second wife. I was distraught. I knew exactly what happened. I confronted him with the proof that I had, and it was, of course, I was gaslighted. I was totally told I was crazy and that I was making shit up, and it was just my grief and trauma talking, and that he would never, ever, ever do that. Things like that to me, even though I literally found texts on the phone that were proof of such a thing. And I was being traumatized over and over with those suicide threats. Like that became a recurring theme of his where, he'd go on these binge, drinking days. And then it was that low and that spiral of, I don't want to be here anymore and I'm going to kill myself. And so it was very up and down, because then we would also have times together that were very good, and very fun. And we would go places and he'd take me on date nights, and we'd have times that, and we would talk and we had really good conversations. And I was like, and so what this created in my mind, and I didn't learn about this term until my healing journey through this, was the cognitive dissonance. Right. So, I was seeing all of this, I was being traumatized and I was seeing all this fucked up shit happening. Right. But then simultaneously I was being love bombed and, manipulated and in such a way that it left me in this state of confusion of questioning my reality, of not knowing what my reality was at the time. Like, does he love me and think I'm, God's gift to earth, or does he want to kill himself? Like it was things that I couldn't piece together and make sense of. And so this is kind of, this wild ride through this marriage. It was very much a roller coaster. We're post-pandemic, right in the middle of the pandemic, actually, right here. Sorry. And it's like everything's shut down. We're doing online schooling with the kids. We're quarantining. Everything's shut down. I was trying to still sell my house over in the valley. So there was a lot of me going back and forth and, cleaning out the house and, communicating with my realtor. And there was just a lot happening, like a lot, so much that this relationship's chaos was kind of just like its own thing, like that I didn't have the space for it. So I wasn't able again to process through it and really understand what was happening to me at the time. I was just like, well, this is happening, and it very much felt like everything was just happening to me at that time. And so, I had so many doubters, of course, as I already mentioned, of people that were like, oh, it was too soon for you to get married anyway, and I'm a person that if you tell me not to do something or that I can't do something, I'm going to be like, watch me. And I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to take pictures because I'm a rebel, like I always have been. And so all of these people, like, throwing their shade against me for getting married too soon, I was like, watch me. I got this. Like, I was very kind of in my ego and in my pride of that point of like, I did not want to be proved wrong. Right. I wanted to, prove them wrong. And I now know, here we are, that they were right. And I have no problem admitting that now. Now I've humbled myself. But I stayed even despite seeing these red flags early on in this relationship, because I was like, oh man, like I just got in this, like, and there's all these people and they're watching me and, like they're like, already think it's too soon. And then if I do this, it's going to be another thing because it literally felt like everything I was doing, I was being judged for. Again, I think I already said that. So, it was very much, I was very ruled by the people at that time, which irritates me now, but whatever. I also did not want to uproot my kids again. Like, they had just lost their dad and then had to move. And then we're now going through COVID bullshit schooling. So there was a lot going on, and I did not want to uproot them. I didn't want to take them out of, I just got them planted in the new home. I'd got them, their rooms set up and all this. And I was like, I don't want to just rip them out of their house, and their new life that they were starting to get adjusted to. And so, I stayed and I, just pushed through, and, this relationship was kind of in that state of up and down and good and bad, and very, the high highs and the low lows. And it was a lot. And so, around my birthday, so this was after despite finding all of the evidence of him having an affair, I still stayed, because he just vehemently denied it, assured me that it did not happen. I was crazy, whatever. So I stayed after that. And a couple months later, he decided that, he wanted to take me out for my birthday. And, I had been getting back into music, as I mentioned. So, I'd gone to karaoke a couple times, and just kind of rediscovering that love for music. I sang and played piano all throughout like high school and stuff, middle school, high school, with my mom and at churches and stuff. So it was kind of just like rediscovering this passion, and it was really fun. And so so Jay took me to karaoke the night of my 36th birthday. And there was a guy working there that was doing the karaoke. He was the KJ. And he's working, and I'm sitting there with Jay, and he says, do you know who that is? And I looked at that guy and I said, no, I don't. Should I? Like, and he said, well, that's Scott Perry. And he used to be like this, country singer that was like kind of a big shot, like in this, local Southern Oregon area. He's like opened for people, and he had like a good career and stuff going on. And, he went to Nashville, and then like something happened and he hasn't been doing any of that since. And so, I was like, well, that's interesting. So long story short, Jay goes and talks to Scott and introduces himself, and, we all kind of talk. And then I hear Scott sing for the first time and have to like pick my jaw off the floor. No, I'm just kidding. I say that now because I'm married to him, but no, he's an amazing singer. So the first time I heard him sing, I was just literally blown away. And then I sang, and, we kind of like discovered like, we kind of had like a similar sound to our voices. And so the guy I was married to at the time, was talking to Scott, and, seeing that Scott had kind of fallen on some hard times and had gone through a breakup, and his living situation was not the greatest. And so Jay at the time was telling Scott, like, you just need to get back up, man. Like, you need to get back to the music. Like, you need to not let, these breakups and the drugs and the this and the that, like, get you down. Like, you need to get back to your music career. And so Jay invited Scott to move onto our property into a trailer that his parents had given us. And so to basically the purpose for that was to help Scott get his life back on track. Jay was kind of taking on the savior complex of like, let's help him. Let's help him, rebuild his life. And which is crazy to think because that dude couldn't even have his shit together. But, and then meanwhile, discovering that Scott and I had like this musical connection, like when him and I sang together the first few times, it was like we'd sang together our whole lives. Like for those of you that have heard us, it's like this crazy, weird blend. And so we just started doing that. We started like rehearsing music and, doing little gigs here and there. Scott knew some people at some of the, different bars. And so we kind of had, we took our connection of being able to sing together and we would play at just like a couple little bars locally. And it ended up getting kind of, it grew, in the Southern Oregon area where, we were doing more music up there. And Jay was all about it. Like he was the number one supporter. He was the one, helping us get equipment, pushing all these ideas, different projects, without even really having a clue how to actually do it. But he was still there. He was still very supportive. And throughout this, Scott and I became really good friends. Like we just became friends. We were singing together and he lived on our property, but I was still married to Jay and we had our thing going and Scott and I had the music thing going, but we were just friends during this time. And so for the last few months of 2020, so this was, like late summer, early fall, by the time we had kind of started, this whole music thing, it was just nonstop crazy. Like, so we think about, where my life was at, where we had the COVID schooling and all new everything, new friends, new life, new house, still not even processed the grief from the year prior from Mark passing away. And then bringing in this new thing of the music. And it was a nonstop crazy train is what it felt like. Trying to like rehearse and book and set up and tear down and play gigs. For those of you that are musicians that follow me and are following the story, I mean, it's grueling work, right? But to have your personal life be spiraling alongside of that is even worse. And that's what was going on. Jay was spiraling more and more with his drinking. He was even dabbling into some drug use. Very dishonest. I kept seeing, things that were popping up that were just straight up lies, like, telling me about this girl that he was just friends with. Well, we all know how that goes, right? Just friends. And then I find nudes in his phone. So, just a lot of that kind of stuff where it, the gaslighting, the manipulating, the engaging other women, one of the first things that he wanted me to do was alter my body. He wanted me to get breast implants. He wanted to spend my husband. So Mark had left money for my family, for my children and I, his retirement money, along with those fundraisers. And Jay was very much all about spending it and finding ways to spend it. And I had many, many exhausting nights of trying to save him from suicide talk and attempts. And it was just so exhausting. And so I'm going to close this out for the end of 2020 because the story gets crazier and we're going to cut this off because I want to get to the end of 2020 and where I was at with this marriage. And then we're going to bring Scott on and we're going to tell Scott's story. And then we're going to come back to this and how we came together through this chaos, and it led to our runaway. So by the end of 2020, I had already been through a lot with this guy, a lot of drama, a lot of trauma, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of scary moments. And at the end of December, someone had gifted me some psychedelic mushrooms, and I took them on a vacation in Vegas when I was with Jay. And it was interesting, to say the least, but I had like this mini awakening. And for, now having worked with psychedelic medicine for the last 2 years, I understand that, these medicines bring a lot of clarity. They bring a lot of light. And so, the mushrooms really just like gave me like this mini awakening, so to speak. And it was like, I was like, hold up. I know who I am. Like, I'm a divine warrior. I'm a child of the Most High. Like, I'm a badass cancer warrior. Like, I just went through hell. I walked through these flames, and like, this guy's going to ruin my life. I think the not. And so I got back from Vegas and had that whole experience where I was literally like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm not going to continue in this marriage. I knew it was toxic. I knew it was unhealthy. And so when we came back, I went ghost. I shut down my social medias. I hid myself away. I didn't respond to anybody. Even Scott, was my friend at the time. I wasn't even talking to him. For the first time, I had to seek that solitude to find peace, to find the balance, and to find answers within myself. I prayed, I cried, I raged a lot. And I cried more, and I let it all out. And the loss, the weight that I carried from not being allowed to grieve the way I needed to grieve, because Jay is convincing me that my life was so great, I don't need to grieve, right? He was bypassing. So all of this just came crashing down and crashing out of me. And the tears just fell as I realized how incredibly broken I was, as he had re-triggered so many past traumas from early in my first marriage. I felt lost. I felt broken. I felt alone. I was scared. But I knew that if I had enough strength to get through the cancer battle and through the actual valley of death, I had enough strength to get out. And I knew that that was what was best for me and my kids. He was also, there was things that were being done to my children. He was very emotionally and mentally abusive to them as well. And I just knew. I knew that he was toxic. I knew that he was an addict. I knew that he was an adulterer. I knew that he was unstable. I knew that he was mentally abusive. He was one of those that labeled all of his exes crazy. And I made that decision at the end of December with my, within myself, that I had to make it a point to leave. And so that was it. I'm going to leave it here because even though I made that decision, there were still 3 more weeks and another few things that had to happen and had to kind of fall into place in order for me to actually make that move of getting out of this abusive and toxic situation. So, I'm going to leave today's episode where it's at now. This was my story of that first relationship after widowhood. I mean, I fell hard into a narcissist trap, and I'm going to do another episode where I strictly talk about the healing from all of this, because I legitimately had PTSD from this relationship, and it took me almost 2 years to heal, and still healing, still having triggers. This episode alone took me over a month just to process through and to culminate through all of these emotions and feelings and triggers within myself to even press record on this phone today. So very much still an ongoing journey. This story is not over yet. Like I said, we're going to pause right here at where I was with the decision at the end of 2020 with, I got to get the fuck out of here. I'm done. Like, this guy had just spiraled way too far, way too many things on top of each other. But the next episodes are going to be Scott's story. So when I met him in the summer of 2020, he was in a very interesting place, as I mentioned, and he's got an incredible story. He has 4 children of his own. As I mentioned, the music career, really, really powerful story of overcoming addiction and heartbreak and coming to a place of where, he has also been able to heal. And, we have a truly divine connection together, being able to heal from all of this together. So we're excited to share his story next, and then we will come back to this particular story of how I actually got out of this marriage in episode 7, which is the runaway. And if you follow us on Scott and Sabrina Music at all and you have not heard our song Runaway yet, go check it out. That'll give you a little preview of why we left Oregon. We wrote that song to tell our story about our runaway. So until next time, thank you so much.